Hello, folks, and welcome in to the Homies Fantasy Football Weekly Recap Show. Each week, the playoff picture becomes a little bit more clear. After this week, we've got one person that has locked up their playoff spot. Congratulations, Schmitty. 6 people are above 90% chance to make the playoffs, and that only leaves 2 spots left for a lot of us scrubs still fighting it out down near the bottom. Well, this week I wanted to do something a little bit fun with the recap show. I reached out to all the winners of last week's matchups and said, hey, will you video a quick little recap of your matchup? Send it on in, and we'll have a little bit of fun seeing all the winners get to dog on the losers this week. But much like everything, my expectations for you all were a bit too high, and so it didn't quite play out the way I wanted. We'll go ahead and start off with Patrick. This is what Patrick sent in.
Hi, it's Pat, the Stashes, coming up here with this recap of what happened between me and my brother Los, Carlos that is. So basically, this will give you a little insight. There was some complications. I traded Carlos Antonio Gibson, and he dropped him like a needy girl. And your boy picked her up, took that man, and he gave me good points this week. And so just want to kind of go through the recap and explain how things happened this week between me and my brother Los. On Carlos's side, as you can see, from quarterback to kicker, spank, 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 spank. He got, on my side, we did the, so we did the hits, and that's it. I'm going to 3-5. Carlos going to 3-5 as well. Both of us not perfect. Definitely trying to turn these trains around, but we will see what happens.
All right, Patrick, not too bad. You could have a future spot on this recap show if you keep bringing it like that. Next up, we have David. Now, it took me about 4 or 5 days to finally get a hold of David, and then once I finally did, this is the gem he sent in.
Yo, what's up? It's Batman. Just here talking smack to my uncle. He thought he was going to win, but he wasn't.
Huh. Well, instead of insulting you, David, and pointing out that it looks like you filmed that on a 2006 flip phone, I'm just going to say thank you for being one of the only ones to actually send a video. Next up, we have Orton. Reached out to Orton, and he told me that he would rather sit at home touching himself and eating Oreos. Thank you for that mental image, Orton. Next, we have Will. Will responded with 2 simple words, playing ball. Apparently, Will has played ball for 72 hours straight, since that's the time frame I gave him to film a very short video talking about his fantasy football win. Honestly, I kind of give up. Schmitty, take it from here.
Well, that put me through mixed emotions. I both impressed how well Patrick did with his recap, albeit, fairly graphic, and still somehow confused how David has not heard of an iPhone here in 2022. And, well, as for Will and Orton, it's, come on. But anyway, homies, welcome back to the Homies Fantasy Football Recap Show, where you don't have to worry if I'm going to show up or not and do the recap. We're here now through Week 8, and as Adam said, only one of us has clinched the playoff spot, that being, But we've still got a long way to go. We've got some matchups to get through, and things are surely to turn around here in the second half of the season. Unless, of course, you're Jose, but that's become about beating a dead horse on this show. Anyway, before we get into the rest of the matchups here for Week 8, we did have one big blockbuster trade go down between myself and Dakota. Dakota is acquiring CeeDee Lamb, Leonard Fournette, Robert Tonyan, and Jerry Jeudy. I acquired Tyreek Hill, David Montgomery, George Kittle, and DK Metcalf. A complete pretty much half-team reset for both of us. Be interesting to see how that one goes forward. But with that, let's get into the rest of the scores and highlights for Week 8. Obviously, Patrick did a pretty good job recapping his game against Carlos, but I did kind of want to put this score up here because that one's ugly. How'd you say this one went down, Patrick?
Spank, 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 spank.
No, yeah, I think that's a pretty good description of how this one went down. Both teams moved to 3-5. We don't need to really say anymore. Next up, we've got Dakota taking on Orton, and this one was a shootout. We had a lot of big scores this week. All the players from all the teams just decided to show up and put up a bunch of points, which you love to see. But this one was a very high-scoring matchup between Dakota and Orton. We'll start on Dakota's side of things. Just so many good scores to go through. We're going to rack them off quickly. Dak Prescott, 25. Dalvin Cook, 25. Tyreek Hill, 31.5. DK Metcalf, 17.5. Garrett Wilson also with 17.5. George Kittle with 13. 153-point week out of Dakota, and somehow wasn't really even nearly enough for the week that Orton had on the other side. A massive number, 176.7 points on the other side as we take a look at his. 22 points for Lamar, 43 for Kamara, an absolute monster game. Jefferson and Higgins both in double digits. DeAndre Hopkins with 34 points. His return has been a beautiful sight for Orton. Evan Ingram as well with 15.5. Big points put up in this one. And if you're Dakota, putting up 153 points and losing by nearly 25 was not a sight you thought you would see, but unfortunately, that's just the way it goes sometimes in fantasy football. Orton takes the win in this one, 176 to 153. Both teams move now to 3-5. Next up, we've got Adam taking on Craig. Now, we've got a tale of two halves coming for these two teams because, as we know, Craig was one of the final two teams to go undefeated in this season, and Adam started the season alongside Jose, not being able to get a win for about the first 5 weeks. Well, things have turned around completely for these two teams. Craig now can't buy a win, and everything except the transmission is coming out of that bus, and Adam has been absolutely red hot. A few bright spots for Craig we'll hit on real quick. Nick Chubb, 25.5. Dontrell Hilliard, 10.5. Brandon Cooks with 11. And Julio Jones with 10 points. Really all the scoring for Craig. Doesn't even manage to hit the century mark this week, just 85 points. And on the other side for Adam, not his best week, but with the way Craig's team's performing right now, it was enough to get the job done. On his side, Taylor Heineke got the start, and he came out and delivered 22 points for him, 12 points for Najee Harris, 20 for Brandon Ayuk, and 11 for the now traded TJ Hawkinson. 105 points this week for Adam, giving him the 20-point victory over Craig. He stays red hot. Adam's back now in the mix of things, along with those stash of teams that are at 3-5. Craig now falling to 5-3. Next up, we've got myself taking on Jose, and you think the dam has to break at some point and the water's going to come rushing through for Jose, but unfortunately, Jose, it's not going to be this week, and it's unfortunate because he actually put up a pretty good week in scoring, 140 points, but much like Dakota when we talked about his matchup with Orton, even with that, not really close in this matchup. But we'll start with Jose's side of things as we run through some of his scores. Geno Smith with 19, Kenneth Walker with 12, Jalen Waddle with 30.5 points, Adam Thielen with 12.5, and Deontay Foreman had a massive 3-touchdown game, 32 points for him. That's 140 points for Jose, and still somehow managed to get blown out. As we look over at my side of things, even missing the quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, the Red Rocket stepped in and did his thing with 17 points. Derrick Henry with an absurd game, 220 yards, couple touchdowns, gets him 36 points. Fournette with 15, CeeDee Lamb with 19, Amon-Ra St. Brown with 14, and Tony Pollard with a 3-touchdown game as well. Had a lot of 3-touchdown games this week, 34 points for him. That's me 170 points on the week. Like I said, we had a lot of big scores this week, but that one nets me the 30-point victory. Back in the win column after last week's loss, I moved to 7-1. Jose now falls to 0-8. It just somehow seems to get uglier for Jose. It's honestly at this point not even funny. It's sad. Next up, we've got Carlos taking on David, and I'll run through this one myself real quick since a toddler could have given a more sophisticated recap than David did. But with this, we got a couple of the two teams that are really hitting it in the mix. Carlos has been pretty hot so far this season, coming in 5-2. David scuffled a little bit to start the year, but gave me my first loss last week and came in this week, and now he's right back in it. We'll start on Carlos' side. Jalen Hurts continues to be red hot in fantasy, 28.5 points out of him. A.J. Brown, 3-touchdown games. We told you they were plentiful this week, and Carlos got one out of A.J. Nearly 40 points out of him with a massive game there. Chase Claypool with 12.5 points. Dallas Goedert with 12.5 as well. 135-point week for Carlos. That's usually going to get the job done. That's just above the projected mark coming into most weeks. But like I said, we had a lot of scoring go down this week, and David had plenty of that to go around as well. Kyler Murray with 24.5 points. Aaron Jones with 20 points. DJ Moore with 27.5. Terry McLaurin with 16.5. Tyler Lockett with 15, Zach Ertz with 13, and Chris Godwin with 13.5 as well. 148 points for David. Couple big wins coming in for him back-to-back, getting him right in that playoff mix. Both teams move now to 5-3. And lastly, we have Matt taking on Will. Much like last one, a couple of red-hot teams coming in looking to keep things going. They both came into this one 5-2, and albeit it's only halfway through the season, the winner of this one would put themselves at the 2 seed so far in our playoff bracket. And it looks like our two two-time chump is putting himself prime in that run to get that title again. Starting on the side of things for Matt, Josh Allen with 17.5, Damian Pierce with 14, Ramondre Stevenson with 21, Stephon Diggs with 23, and Tyler Boyd with 13. Overall, a pretty good week for Matt. It's not been the red-hot 160, 170-point scores we've been seeing out of him the last few weeks, but usually a pretty good score, 123.5 points for him. But on the other side for Will, he scuffled a little bit the last couple of weeks, but came out this week, put out a pretty good number in large part due to his running back, Christian McCaffrey, who managed to score a touchdown in 3 different ways, passing, rushing, and receiving. He netted 40 points, as we were talking about. 3 touchdown games were plentiful. He had another one of those with 40. Tom Brady with 17, Saquon Barkley with 15, Michael Pittman with 12, and Jacoby Myers with 21. Nets Will 136 points on the week. That one gives him the victory over Matt. He moves now to 6-2. Matt falls to 5-3. However, things don't get any easier for Will, as he has to face me this next week. We got the top 2 records in the league facing off, and well, I mean, since Will won't see this, since he's probably playing softball for the 9th day in a row, you're going down, bitch. Anyway, that's going to do it for the scores and highlights here for Week 8. Make sure to get those lineups set for Thursday Night Football. And as always, keep those trade proposals coming. Keep that smack talk a-flowing. We'll see you guys next week for the Week 9 recap. So long, losers.